Today I'm going to show you how to install these clear Honda Civic coupe taillight lenses. You can source these lenses from eBay, and I am actually now a dealer for these lenses, which I'm very excited about. They've been on eBay for a while, and I am finally able to work with them and list these up for sale, and now I actually get to show you how to install them as well. First thing you're gonna need is obviously the lenses themselves and a brand new set of the Civic coupe taillights. First thing you're gonna need to modify these is something to cut them open with. We prefer the ultrasonic cutter because this blade is so thin, it makes a really good, nice clean cut in between the lens and the back housing on these. But if you don't have an ultrasonic cutter, you can use a Dremel. We prefer to use the diamond bit on it because it's the thinnest Dremel bit that I have found on the market. So that's the one I'm definitely gonna recommend. This is way messier, so we stick with the ultrasonic cutter. Once you have done your cut on the taillight, we actually need to kind of pop it loose. The plastic is still gonna try and hold together, so that's where the pocket screwdrivers and bigger screwdrivers are gonna come in handy. We're gonna be able to get in there and pry and twist and get this taillight lens to let go of the back housing. Once we have the red lens off, it is time to glue the new one in place. Now I have seen some people will use just silicone to put these lenses on. I prefer not to do that, especially since I am selling these to customers. I want this lens to never come off. I want the clear lens to never come off once we actually install it. So we're probably gonna use a combination of two different types of glue. I'm gonna use this instant cure adhesive right here to hold the lens in place. And then I'm gonna use several dots of the automotive goop. This is gonna give it a little more long lasting hold, but it takes a while to cure up. So the combination of those two is gonna keep this lens in place. Once the lens has been glued on and it's cured up, we can then move on to some silicone. I prefer to use black silicone. I think it looks the best. So we're gonna use black silicone 2. To me, this is the stuff that holds the best. And if you absolutely need to, you can actually remove this stuff. It comes off relatively clean. Once you have the taillight lens fully installed and sealed up and everything, you might want to paint it. Some people will want to paint it a different color. Some people like a black band instead of the silver band. Either way, that's whenever it's a good time to do it. And in that case, you'll need some spray paint so that you can get that done. Okay, we've got the taillight over on the actual workbench so we can get started. If it isn't obvious already, these taillights are plastic welded together, which is why we have to cut. So what we're gonna end up doing is cutting all around the edges here, literally in between the lens and the back housing with either the Dremel or the ultrasonic cutter all the way around. You can do this without removing the fin, which is why I didn't recommend the Phillips head screwdriver right here, which is why I didn't have the Phillips head screwdriver in my tool recommendations. But if you absolutely want to do this if you want to take your project to the next level and not have a bunch of gunk built up on the actual fin here, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and remove this so that you can do all the work that you need to with the fin off, and then you can go ahead and put the fin back on once everything is all said and done, which is what we're going to do since we charged a customer for this work. It's just one Phillips head screw right here, so it's not a huge deal. With that removed, it's now time to start cutting. You may be wondering how deep to cut. The way that you can tell is by looking through the front of the lens. So if we come over to a part that has not been cut yet, you can see right here, you can see the darker part of the lens right here. That's probably the width of this pocket screwdriver right there. That is the actual plastic seal. That is what's plastic welded. So what we're gonna do is we are just going to cut straight through that. You can see starting right there. That lighter part of the seal is where I have already started cutting. So we're gonna do that all the way down the light and around and down and around. Okay, so I have loosened up the 3 sides here. Sometimes you can get away with just doing 3 sides, especially if it's a lens that you're not gonna use. Like, we're literally gonna throw this away. So I'm gonna try to just loosen up these 3 sides and then just peel the whole thing back. Let's see. This is where the pocket screwdriver comes in handy. We are going to go ahead and put that right in there. Boom. Okay, so now that we have the lens cut off, we do have one thing we have to do before we install the clear lens, and that is to try and get as much of this old red lens off of here as possible, because unfortunately this will be able to be seen in some spots, and if it's really wavy, if the cut's really bad, just like that right there, it's gonna cause the lens to sit up. Even though it's not much plastic, looking at it like this, when the lens is on there, it's gonna create a pretty decent size gap that is not going to seal up properly, especially right through. So we need to get all of this red stuff off of there. So I have these pair of pliers right here that actually work really well for removing this, but if you don't have a pair of pliers like this or a pair of needle nose, then you can actually just use the cutter that you were already using to get rid of this excess red stuff. So literally just turn on your cutting tool and get to cutting again. Okay, we got as much of the red off as I possibly could. The tough part on these is this lip right here. It makes it difficult to actually get down in there and trim off all the rest of the red. But as you can see, this lens is going to sit very flush onto this taillight housing, which means we can come and grab the taillight lens and get it set in place. The thing I really like about these clear lenses is that they actually have the little overhang piece, just like the OEM ones. The old strategy was to cut the clear lens off of this specific aftermarket set, and it doesn't have that clear lens overhang. So whenever you install it onto the OEM light, it makes it look like there's a big old gap because it doesn't have this much of the lens on it anymore. So it just makes it look like it has a really fat gap. And I had a couple of customers ask me what's up with that, and I had to do this whole explanation. So this is really nice that this actually has that. One thing I like to do to help with the install is just put a couple of strips of tape to hold it in place. Okay, so the lens is currently held in place by the tape. So what I'm gonna do next is use the instant glue. I'm going to spray the instant glue on there and get this lens permanently held in place, and then we can put the other glue and the silicone on. So we're only gonna need a couple of dots of it. The lens has been glued in place. The glue has completely dried. So now we can actually start to seal this up. To do this, I'm going to take the silicone and put it in between the lens and the back housing and then wipe away the excess. The silicone is right there in between the lens and the back housing. Just gonna wipe the excess away. I always try to push the silicone away from the lens, if that makes sense, so that you don't see the silicone on this side. Okay, there we go. No silicone on that side. It is all sitting right here. Now we just have to do that all the way around the light and inside right through here. And it is completely sealed up all the way around the tail light and the lens. That is so hard to get the camera to focus on, but it is completely sealed up now, so we're gonna give that a few minutes to cure, and then we can put the fin back on. Before I put the fin back on, I wanna show you a couple of the imperfections that I put into the lens during the installation that is gonna require me to do paint work. Now, overall, this does look really cool, really amazing, but during the installation, I did scuff the metallic coating that is on the back of the lens in a few spots. You can come through and just see them all. And then whenever I was putting the adhesive in right here, it dripped below the metallic line, which is not ideal. Honestly, you really can't see it until you're about a foot from it. And then there is actually this green piece right here that is in the actual lens itself, in the resin. So we're definitely gonna have to cover that up. To you, some of those minor imperfections might not be that big of a deal, but like I said before, since we are charging customers for this work, we are going to go ahead and paint it so that it does look like it was meant to be built like that. When it has these minor imperfections like that, it just doesn't look right or sit right with me that I charged someone to have these imperfections in it. So we need to get started on paint. But I'm not going to bore you with that. This is where I am going to wrap up the video, because literally all I'm going to do is just mask it off and then paint the outside border with the metallic silver.